Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Potvin here going over topic 3 of Unit D. This will be the last topic of the chapter. We're going to talk a little bit about science and technology and society and how all those things have led to new mechanical devices. So, first topic is evaluating mechanical devices. We actually have a fun time with this in the classroom, but not going to be able to do some of those things for obvious reasons. So let's take a look at this TV over on the right, or sorry, over on the left here. It's a picture of the evolution of the television. This is fairly old. It goes up to 2012, from 1897 up to 2012. It's a picture I borrowed from the internet. If we were to find a newer one, we'd obviously have newer and greater TVs similar to ones that are in my classroom, maybe even newer than that. So you can see that through the years, the TV changed drastically. Okay. Um, some other things that we notice on this chart is as time progressed, okay, these new changes, the amount of time in between the changes actually decreased. Okay, so we start off with the CRT, just the little tubes way back in the 1897s, and then we go all the way up to 1936, and we have some of the more modern black and white TVs. I say modern. You can see that the TV itself was quite small and had a big console around it. Then let's flip forward a little bit further into the future to 1954 to 1965. This is still before my time, but TVs were small. They were still fairly small. The screens were small and they were bulky. They were also quite heavy. Then between 1965 and 1999, we started getting our colored TVs. Again, the color TVs were small, but eventually they got a little bit bigger. Then near the end of the century, we had these large TVs, but they were quite bulky. 34-inch TV, which nowadays is a small TV. Something like this could be pretty heavy. Not everyone was able to carry one by themselves. You probably needed two people. And then around 2000, we got these big projection screen TVs. So when I was growing up, I had something along this line, maybe something in between here. We had a fairly large, it had like a wooden console or a fake wooden console around it. It was probably about a 24 to 30-inch TV. To me, I thought that was massive. Then we eventually did get one into this range, and then we had our projection TVs. These were the ones where there was actually a projector in behind, and they were very big. I think 48 inches, 54 inches, something along those lines. And they were also very heavy. And then eventually we got to some of the newer TVs, the digital TVs, plasma TVs. And like I said, we'd have another one right here with some of these new, large, very high definition TVs that were they're very light, right? So like that TV that we have in my classroom, I think it's a 72-inch. I'd be able to carry that and move that around no problem. So, what led to the improvement of the TV over all these years? Okay, now obviously those improvements were in science and technology. Okay, so as science and technology improved throughout the years, improvements of TVs happened. Okay, what happens when a TV first comes out? Are they cheap? They're not. Okay, these new TVs they come out, they're pretty expensive, right? The demand's not there, so they have a high price. But once people start getting used to them, they start buying more. They're able to increase the supply. The demand maybe goes down a bit, and then the price of those TVs will end up by going down. All right, so criteria to consider when we're evaluating a device. And in this situation, I'd go and I'd pretend I broke somebody's cell phone, or I show a video of me throwing away somebody's cell phone. I ask you, what are the things that we need? Like I'm going to now buy you a new cell phone. Miss Saraceni said I broke the phone, so I have to go and replace it. What would be some of the criteria you guys would want for your cell phone? And you'd go and you'd give me a whole list of things. And typically it goes to about 15 to 20 things before somebody says, well, I want my cell phone to be able to make phone calls. Right. So we need to consider some criteria that's used in evaluating how good a device is, or what a device would actually um, how we would evaluate the device. So obviously the first thing is use. Okay, so going to cell phones. Cell phones, when they first came out, the purpose of the cell phone was to be able to phone somebody. Okay, nowadays that's minor, right? You FaceTime, sure, you can call somebody, sure, but everyone wants to play games, look on the web, do all those fun, fancy things, listen to music. Cell phones have so many different uses now. The other thing is the purpose. So this is different than the use, right? Purpose of a cell phone. I got my cell phone right here. Purpose of the cell phone is to be able to talk to somebody, is to be able to communicate with somebody, right? I did not have a cell phone growing up, but a big argument parents give is I want to have a cell phone so I can make sure I know my little boy or little girl is nice, safe, and sound, which is totally valid. I totally understand that. However, the actual use of the cell phone is, oh, well, I'm playing games, right? Or I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So the use and the purpose are different. Cost is obviously something else, okay, to consider. You probably want the highest and the most expensive cell phone for sure, but the cost of the cell phone definitely would would be a consideration when you're evaluating the device you want. What it looks like is another thing. Okay, so cell phones, there could be some really, really good cell phones out there, but especially for you guys, teenagers, you have to have everything that's the best, right? Or that looks cool. Okay, those are AirPods. They have to be the perfect AirPods. You can't use some of those other ones because they don't look as good. What it looks like is important. Okay, it is definitely something to consider when evaluating a device. And then obviously the workmanship. Okay, so going back to cell phones, I'd go and I say, well, you can go and get a nice, really, really high quality cell phone that does all the tools, but the second you drop it, does it shatter? Does it break? Does it drop calls here and there? Would you really want that? And then the last thing we have on here is reputation. Okay, so again, there's Samsung, there's iPhone. Those have fairly good reputations. There's BlackBerry. That's another one that has a fairly good reputation. It's more for the older people. But I go and I tell kids Tim Hortons, they've revolutionized coffee sales, et cetera, and they're going and they're branching out and they're going to start making cell phones. Are you going to go buy Tim Hortons cell phone? Right now, probably not, because they're not a reputable company when it comes to cell phones. Over time, maybe, you never know. But right now, as it stands, well, Tim Hortons is not very reputable for cell phones, so they don't have that good reputation. That leads us to talking about efficiency and effectiveness. And these are two very important definitions. Sound similar, both start with the letter E, but they are quite different. Okay. So we discussed last units or the last section how we can figure out efficiency. We did some mathematical calculations. We did mechanical advantage over speed ratio times 100. That gave us a percentage. And then we also did work output divided by work input, gave us a percentage. Okay. Whenever we're using calculations or doing numbers, that is called quantitative analysis. So we are actually using numbers to come up with a ratio of how effective the devices are. Okay. We can also describe how effective a device is. I can go and say, oh, my cell phone's great. I love it. You can play lots of games on it. Or I can go and say, yeah, my cell phone in my house, I drop calls all the time. I have to have a landline because I can't trust my cell phone to not break up phone calls, those types of things. In those cases, I'm just describing. Those are qualitative descriptors. So you can describe the effectiveness of something using quantitative or qualitative. Okay, both are valid, both are sound. Quantitative, more of the scientific numbers. Qualitative, super, super important. You definitely want to take both things into consideration. The general rule for evaluating a mechanical device, though, this might be important, is to look for the best combination of effectiveness and efficiency at a cost that you can afford. Okay, and that is important. The cost is always, always important. You don't want to go and break the bank for a cell phone, for example. And you're going to have to consider this for everything you do throughout life. Cars. You're going to have to be able to purchase. You want to buy a good car, but obviously it has to be a car that you can afford. Continuing with efficiency and effectiveness, the effectiveness of a device is determined whether or not the device actually completes the job or does the job. So going back to cell phones, if I was to go get a Tim Hortons cell phone and the purpose of the Tim Hortons cell phone was to be able to go and make a phone call, that's pretty effective, right? The efficiency, okay, of a device is determined how well the device does the job. Okay. Again, we can use bikes as an example. Bikes are a great example as well. Okay, a one-speed bike, just those basic little bikes where you just pedal and the gears are connected to each other. There's no changing the gears. Those are extremely effective devices. Okay, you can take a bike to go from point A to point B. That's the purpose of the job of the bike, is to transport a person from one point to another. It is also efficient because let's say you're going to school, you could use a one-speed bike to pedal to school and you still get there faster than it would take if you were walking. However, A 21 speed bike, it's also effective. It'll also get you from point A to point B, but it is more efficient because you can switch the gears. You can get from point A to point B faster. Okay, so it all depends on what you're looking for. So a one speed bike, totally effective and also somewhat efficient, but a 21 speed bike, still effective, but more so efficient because it can get you there a lot faster. Function and design is also something we want to consider. Take a look at these two bikes on the side here. Okay, scientists, engineers, and other inventors, they want to develop machines, mechanical devices that work effectively and efficiency. We want to get a combination of both. Okay, to do that, you need to consider the function and the design. So again, function is what a bike is supposed to do. So here's a picture of two bikes. That bike is supposed to be able to move you from point A to point B for sure. Okay, the basic function is just to transport a person. The design is the physical form that that device takes. So again, we have two bikes here. This one on the top, we have like a road bike, a race bike. It has a specific design to it. Down here, we have an off-road bike, okay, cross-country bike. So it obviously has a specific design. More spokes on, or sorry, more springs and shocks on here. Bigger tires. This one is a lot more streamlined. The smaller tires, maybe not as much grip. Okay. Different types of bicycles have very specific functions, and their designers and the designs reflect these functions. So again, a mountain bike and a racing bike, they have completely different designs. Okay, they both have two wheels, they both have handlebars, brakes, seats, etc., but they clearly look different. That leads us to a really important case study, which sometimes students will go and they'll sigh. I'll actually be posting a YouTube video that is really good on this, but it has to do with the evolution of the pop can opener. Okay, and there's a lot of questions on your quiz for this, so this is a perfect example of where you should be watching this video before writing the quizzes or going through your textbook. Okay, so to evaluate the pop can opener or can openers, manufacturers most likely ask themselves the following 6 questions. And these are 6 very important questions. We're going to talk about each of the stages. First is it efficient? Does it open the can quickly and easily? Is it effective? Does it actually allow air into the can so other air can flow out? Thinking back to other classes or other science classes, you need to have sometimes 2 holes or a really large hole in order for the liquid to pour out of the can, air to go and replace that liquid. Is it safe? Does it create an opening that allows people to drink directly out of the can? Is it convenient? Is it there when we need it? Will it open? Will the opener contribute to litter? And lastly, is the opener recyclable along with the can? These are some questions that we're going to ask ourselves as we go through the evolution of the pop can or can opener. Okay, so the cans of the 1810s, the very old cans, they were made from iron. They were solid iron cans. The only way to open them at that time was with a chisel and a hammer. So you have to take that hammer and that chisel and bash at them. What would their evaluation look like? Okay, so was it effective? For sure, it was effective. A chisel and a hammer opened up the can. Okay, did the job. Was it efficient? Well, you can go and say, yeah, we were able to open up both holes. You can put pop a hole on one side, pop a hole on another side. Sure, it was efficient. Like it was there. Is it safe? Walking around with a hammer and a chisel. Imagine school. Imagine nowadays you're walking around with a hammer and chisel. You go to school, teacher asks you, "What's that for?" And you're like, "Oh, well, my parents packed me a pop for lunch. Right? I need this to open it." Okay, not really safe. What happens if somebody goes and trips while they're carrying their chisel? Impale themselves. Not something you'd want to happen. Or heaven forbid, let's say we were at a really rough school and a fight broke out. Okay, we wouldn't want to have stuff like that. Is it convenient? Well, again, is it convenient to be walking around with a hammer and chisel in your backpack or your back pocket? Okay, not the most convenient thing. What happens if this wouldn't happen? Because you guys are grade 8 students, you're very responsible, you bring everything to school. But what would happen if you forgot your chisel at home, right? Okay, not very convenient. You're stuck with a can and no way to open it. Will it contribute to litter? Well, this one was actually pretty good because you kept the hammer, you kept the chisel. Shouldn't be throwing them around. Okay, hammers and chisels probably weren't the cheapest things in the world. And is it recyclable? Well, the can itself would be recyclable. We wouldn't be removing anything. So if we wanted to recycle the hammer and chisel, or if we just wanted to reuse it, okay, sure. So in some of those cases, the old 1810 can opener, well, they had some pretty good points. They had some pretty poor points. Okay, So this led to an invention called a church key. Okay, the church key was created to help reduce the need of a hammer and chisel. Hammer and chisel is very bulky, carrying them around. Okay, maybe back in the 1800s, it was a little bit more common to be able to carry one around, but as time progressed, carrying a hammer and chisel just to open a can wasn't very convenient. So the church key came around. And you guys probably have something like this at home. Okay, they're still used today. It had a very sharp end on one side, had a little notch so you can hook onto the side of the can, and then had another notch on this end to help open up the can. Okay, so you'd be able to pop a hole on one side, pop a hole on another, and you'd be able to pour it out. It's still used, like if you buy creamers, canned creamers, you can still use that to open up the canned creamer. Was it effective? Again, we're going to see all of these devices were effective. Okay, it opened up the can. Okay, it's allowed the liquid out. Was it efficient? Yeah, we were able to open up both sides. We were able to do it with fairly little force. As you can see here, it's a lever, right? So you can use less force and get more force out, especially at the wedge component up here, the pointy part. Okay. Was it safe? Again, smaller. Okay. It was a little bit more convenient because it's smaller than the hammer and chisel, and you could go and maybe stick it in your back pocket, walk around. But imagine if you stuck it in your back pocket and was pointed the wrong way. Okay. You'd be piercing nice little holes in your bum cheeks. Okay. Not something that would be ideal, not very safe. Possibly could get infected because you probably weren't washing it and sanitizing it after every single time you opened it. So as you're opening the cans, maybe some bacteria or whatnot got into the can. And if you had it in your back pocket but flipped the other way and you sat down, you could be ripping holes into your pants. And again, going back to you know rougher areas, if you get in a little fight or whatnot, could be kind of used as a little knife or something. So not very safe. Is it convenient? Well, if you're keeping your back pocket, sure. Okay, it's convenient, it's there. However, going back to responsible grade 8 student, uh, remembering it and not forgetting it on your desk or on your countertop before you left home, never know, right? Not very convenient if you forgot it. So you could be stuck with a can not being able to open it. Will it contribute to litter? Well, you probably wouldn't want to be throwing these around, throwing these away. Okay, so wouldn't contribute to litter unless you drop it or whatnot. And is it recyclable? I guess it could be, but again, it's something that is reusable, so you probably wouldn't be recycling. Okay, so that leads to the next step in the pop can opener, and that was the removable tab top. And this is still used today, maybe not in the same way, but here's a picture of it. So we had this is more for the pop and the beverage drinks, but you had a can and you had a little lid on it, and you could peel that off, and it would come on up, and you could just rip it off, and you'd have a nice opening. So, was it effective? Yeah. Okay. I actually remember using some of these for sure. It was effective. Um, it opened up the the beverage fairly easily. Okay, so you can get to the beverage. Was it efficient? Yeah, it was as efficient as well. You could remove it, gave a nice big opening, so the beverage would come out of this hole, and then air would go and take its place in here, so it would come and pour out smoothly. Was it safe? Well, not really. Okay, not the safest thing in the world. It's an aluminum can. I'm sure you guys have felt the edges of aluminum cans. This was sharp. Okay, it got fairly sharp. It could cut you. Um, Pulling it off, sometimes it broke. Okay, and it wouldn't be as effective pulling it off. Sometimes this piece right here could break and fall in, and then you'd have to possibly risk drinking it. So yeah, there were some things that weren't very safe on it. Okay, the other thing was very easily could throw it away. It says here, please don't litter. Okay, but a lot of times people just go, just like cigarette butts, not caring with the environment, just a small little metal thing. Who cares? They throw it out. Well, you're out on the beach and you're running around, and this is like really sharp. You don't cut your toe because somebody goes and throws out um, uh, the tab top. Okay, so not very safe. Is it convenient? Yeah, it was convenient. It was there, right? It was there when you needed it. You didn't have to worry about carrying something around, so it had some good things. Will it contribute to litter? I already talked about that. People would throw it out all the time. They were all over the place. Okay, and then what about the environment? Is it recyclable? Yeah, it was recyclable. You could go and recycle this. Going back to contributing to litter and being safe, another thing that actually happened was a lot of birds would fly around and they'd pick these up. The birds are attracted to shiny thing. They'd pick it up, bring it to their nest. They'd swallow it. Wildlife would swallow it. Not very good for their digestive systems. It would cut them up from the inside. Okay, so again, did its job, was effective, was efficient in a way, but there was definitely some negatives. That led to the push buttons. Okay, and I remember these ones. I hated them. This was the push button. So you had a small push button here. You push that one first, and then you push this large one. Okay, was it effective? Sure was. Okay, it definitely was effective. It was able to open up the can so that we can get the beverages out. Was it efficient? It was, but this little one right here, with the can being under so much pressure and whatnot, it was kind of hard to push that one in. Okay, so it was efficient, but it took a little bit more force to go and push it in. A lot of times people would put something in there and then bash it so it can goes down, it can open up. However, when you opened up that one, this one became a little bit easier to open. Is it safe? This was another one where safety sort of took a back door on it. Okay, pushing your thumb through here, especially kids, especially kids with smaller fingers, you're pushing down with your thumb. It wasn't uncommon for the thumb to actually go through here, and of course you're going to be cutting your thumb. So that cranberry 7-Up that they were selling a couple of years ago, cranberry Sprite, whatever it was, with the tinge of red, that this is probably where they got that idea, because you're probably introducing a little bit blood into your beverage. So not the safest thing in the world. Also, these tabs could, not often, but they could pop in and they could fall in. If this one was to fall in and you were to drink out of here, well, you ran the risk again of ingesting that smaller tab. Was it convenient? Again, most of these newer models, they were convenient. You could open it up right there. Will it contribute to litter? Well, it wouldn't. Okay, if you're recycling the can, right, and everything it stays attached to the can, it wouldn't recycle. It wouldn't contribute much to litter. And was it recyclable? Yeah, it was recyclable with the can. Okay, and that led us to the pop can opener that we know and love today, the non-removable tab top. And there it is. Look at that beautiful thing. You can open up the lid and everything stays on. Let's go through each of these. Is it effective? Yes, extremely effective. If you watch and is it efficient? It is extremely efficient. If you watch the video, it shows how this is actually two levers in one. It goes from a uh, class class one lever, and as soon as it breaks open, it flips into a class, I believe it's 3 lever. Okay, so it's really effective. It opens up, it gives you a nice big opening like you can see here, so it allows the beverage in and the beverage out and the air to go in. So very effective, very efficient. Is it safe? Yeah, okay. You shouldn't have to put your fingers in here. Okay, you shouldn't have to worry about cutting yourself on the edges. All you have to do is worry about the tab top. Maybe you break a nail, that sucks, but it's fairly safe compared to some of the other ones. Is it convenient? Well, it's right there. Okay, so totally convenient. Will it contribute to litter? It shouldn't. It's a non-removable tab top, so the tab top should stay on there, so you shouldn't be tossing it away. Um, you can take it off. I know you've all done it. You flicked it back and forth, back and forth. If you take that off, then yeah, it could contribute to litter. But if it's used the way it's supposed to, it would stay on there. And then finally, is it recyclable? And yeah, it's recyclable with the can. And in addition to that, you might remember used to be able to collect them, and they would melt that down, just those little lids, and they make wheelchairs and things like that out of it. So yeah, out of all of the different scenarios, the one that we have right now actually fits the bill the most for the different criteria that we would go and evaluate. Does that mean this is it? There's going to be no more improvements? Okay, of course, there could still be improvements. One of you guys could go and make improvements and win the Nobel Prize on improvements for can openers. Go and get that big $1 million prize and go and have a nice speech. And then you can go and say, yeah, my science teacher, Mr. Brodman, he's the one that encouraged me and gave me the motivation to go and make a new pop can opener. You never know. All right. So, like I said, I will be posting a video. I highly recommend you watch it. It's a pretty good one. It talks about the can opener, but it also talks about other things. Okay. And that leads us to the effect of a device on the environment. Okay. So we mentioned it during the pop can thing. The environment is definitely sometimes really important to consider when we're talking about the effectiveness of a device. Okay. So it should definitely be considered when evaluating a device. So give an example of how mechanical devices can be efficient and effective, but can negatively affect the environment. There's lots. Okay, think about everything that's going on in the earth right now. We can have devices that are efficient. We can have devices that are effective. However, they are harmful to the environment. Think of those big giant monster trucks. Love them. Okay, a lot of fun to ride in. Can go off-roading and whatnot, and get out of areas where you're stuck. But then when you're doing that, ripping through lakes and streams and like things like that, you're wrecking fish habitat, you're negatively affecting wildlife habitat. So it is definitely something you want to consider as well. Okay, and that is it. So that's it for the topic. Might have been a little bit longer, but make sure you guys know about the pop cans when you guys are writing the quiz. Okay, just go back to those sections and there will be some questions on it. You definitely want to know what all the stages are and read the questions. The questions might be a little specific. It might say 1810 or something like that. What were they using? Okay, so make sure you choose the right answer. If you have any questions, like always, send me an email and we'll go from there. Have a good one.